Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional land of the Whyalla people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Whyalla people as the custodians of the Whyalla region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Whyalla people today. My name is Gabriel Kelly. I've been asked by Council to chair this meeting as a person experienced in building collaboration, solving problems and working with communities, and I've done it before, such as with the Port Adelaide Enfield community, City of Adelaide, Playford North and the City of Onkaparinga, and many others. Just a little bit of housekeeping first. Some of you were expressing concern about the seating and the closeness of the seating. There's been a very strict COVID safe plan that's been undertaken for this evening. It's a ticketed event, so we know everybody who's here, and we've been assured that this is a safe and acceptable way to conduct this meeting. If anybody is concerned for themselves, they're perfectly free to take their chair. There's still room in the hall to go and move at a safe distance if you're worried. So please don't be concerned. Do move your chair and nobody will be fussed about that. But it has been approved as COVID safe. The toilets, by the way, are down this corridor to the right. And don't hesitate to go and use them if you need to during the meeting over 1.5 hours. Emergency exits are on either side of the room. The emergency meeting point is Ian Street, which I believe you know, behind this venue. And please follow staff instructions should there be an emergency, which I'm not expecting. But may I just ask staff to stand, please, so that the whole group can understand who are staff members. Could you just quickly stand up so that you will know who to follow? Thank you very much. Thank you. Please sit down. Firstly, though, before we get very far, I'd like to establish the broader context. It's early in the evening in one of the lovely places in the world. This terrible COVID year of last year is over now, and the situation is settling for Australia, though it's still challenging. But it rages worldwide, putting pressure on all governments, all communities, impacting jobs and tourism and trade here and everywhere, and affecting the pace of decisions about all the other matters that affect communities deeply, from the economy to the way we interact with each other. Now here in Whyalla, we have democratic tension right here, right now. Community members, you, have raised concerns about a legal decision taken by elected representatives on behalf of the community they serve. To those citizens who've expressed their concern, and particularly to Senator Rex Patrick, who organised a petition on this issue on behalf of the community, I welcome you. This petition will be presented tonight by Senator Patrick. Welcome too to Eddie Hughes MP, local state member, who's also been engaged in the conversation. It's really pleasing to see all tiers of government here tonight, committed to talking, listening and understanding this issue together. To the former proprietor of the Beach Café, Nick Petropoulos, and to the numerous current and former employees of the cafe, I welcome you too particularly. And to the patrons of the Beach Café, who have enjoyed the service and offerings of the cafe and made it part of your everyday life in the community, and to the media who've covered this issue in order to keep you informed, I welcome all of you. To other interested community members, and there's a lot of people here tonight, as well as any visitors who've discovered a love for this wonderful region, you are welcome to see a healthy democracy in progress tonight. This meeting is just a beginning to address issues raised and to reimagine the Foreshore into the future. To Mayor Claire Mclaughlin and her fellow elected members, as well as Chief Executive Officer Justin Commons and other City of Whyalla managers and staff, thank you for setting up this meeting so promptly. Though many of us, and certainly me, are still in the middle of a holiday period, I take this rapid call out to get together as a sign of your willingness to engage and listen to your community. It demonstrates the value that you place on maintaining a good relationship with this community. To any other previous mayors and council members of the city that may be present, and I believe there are some, particular welcome to you tonight. Now, in my travels, I've learned a lot about respecting different interests and finding useful ways forward to complicated problems with an eye to the future. I am personally deeply committed to the ideals that underpin democracy and good government, while respecting community and citizen rights and involvement. Excuse me for a moment. I believe that every time we face and solve a problem like this together, we are continually building our capacity for our democracy and increasing our capacity to build a stronger and better future together. Now, our objectives and the agenda for this meeting tonight are quite simple. We've got an hour and a half, and I will undertake to you that I will close the meeting as agreed at 7:30. We aim, first of all, to achieve a shared understanding of the relevant facts affecting the cafe decision, with a recent chronology helping establish how the Council reached this position. We will hear firstly from the Mayor and the newly appointed Chief Executive Officer, Justin Commons, who represent and are speaking on behalf of the whole Council this evening. We'll then invite Senator Patrick, who will present the petition, which has been filled in by, I believe, at least 1,500 people, which is really a fabulous result for a petition. And then we'll invite Eddie Hughes to come and speak as well. And all of this will take about 30 minutes, so there'll be a bit of listening. It's about gaining some shared understanding of a number of positions. I'm going to manage the timing tonight, and I'm going to ask that we all listen to this part very carefully. We've got pens and paper on the seats for anyone to write down any questions or comments that they might want to speak about later when it's your turn to talk. We'll then have your turn to talk, which will be the open mic session, which will run for about 30 minutes. And in that time, many of you will have an opportunity to ask questions, express concerns or feelings. And obviously, not all of you will be able to do that because there are so many of you here, which I've got to say is a tribute to your community. I ask that we please all maintain a constructive tone, even when we're aerating differences of opinion and legitimate feelings of loss or worry or concern. I hope to hear from as many people as possible. If questions are unable to be answered, we will take these on notice and provide responses to you personally as soon as possible. As I said, not everybody will get a chance to speak. So please be prepared, some of you, to make your comments on paper, which we will collect afterwards and we'd be very pleased to have and we will answer. But equally, can you ensure that there's no one or two people who dominate all of that 30 minutes? And after anybody's been involved for about at least 5 minutes max, I will be asking people if they can wind up in the spirit of sharing the open mic with the whole room. Can I see a show of hands if that's an okay way to proceed with that? To get a fair go? Thank you very much. So I'll operate with your authority on that. And a recording of tonight's forum will be made available at a later date. Now, after that open mic session, we need to look at the issue of the cafe in the larger context of the proposed Foreshore redevelopment. And we need to look to the future. So we're going to hear more about this from Justin. And finally, we'll describe the proposed next steps for continuing this and broadening this conversation with you and more of the community. We understand that a public event like this can only get so far, just a beginning to address the many intersecting issues and timeframes which will be clearer to more of us after tonight. And now it's time for me to hand over to the shared understanding part of the meeting for the next approximate 30 minutes, and I welcome Mayor Claire Mclaughlin to the stage.
Thank you everyone, and it's a fantastic turnout and I'm very pleased to see many people in the community here tonight. I'd like to thank you all for being here. We know this is an important issue for our community, so this is the perfect opportunity to create a shared understanding of the situation by having your queries and concerns heard and addressed, hearing from Council as to why the decision to close the Council was made, and allowing all of us to work together on the way forward for the facility in the broader Foreshore area. Our CEO, Justin Commons, will shortly outline the logic and chronology of events leading to this decision. But first I wanted to elaborate from the perspective of the elected members. I must reinforce that this was an incredibly difficult decision for myself and the elected members to make. We understand what the facility means to many of you and the impact this would have on Nick and his staff. However, this could not be about individuals, unfortunately. Once presented with the information outlining the serious risks posed by operating a cafe out of this building, it was a decision we had to make in the interest of the health and safety of the entire community and all patrons and staff of the facility. Some of the community have suggested it could have remained open throughout the summer, which is usually the peak period for business. This was debated at length by the elected members, but knowing the risk that would be borne by Council should the cafe continue to operate, potentially exposing ratepayers to a further significant financial risk, we had to act immediately. By late December, it became clear that the community's concerns regarding the closure were becoming extremely significant. After discussions I had with Member for Giles Ed Hughes, as well as Senator Rex Patrick, about his petition and request for the council meeting to be convened on this matter, I as Mayor decided it was preferable to talk directly to the community as soon as possible, and I believe direct communication is the most appropriate response wherever possible. And given the festive season, unfortunately, this was the earliest time for us to meet, so I'm very grateful you all come. As you will hear from Justin, our key focus now is on what the community wants from that facility, in both the short and long term, and how that aligns with the community's expectations for the broader Foreshore Master Plan, on which we will conduct extensive community consultation over the coming months. We have a unique and exciting opportunity before us, with our stunning new world-class jetty attracting widespread acclaim and hundreds of visitors per day, as well as a number of other developments, including the school, gradually enhancing the evolution of our city. Added to this, because of the COVID experience and being able to work from home, people from across the country are moving from cities to regional areas such as Whyalla, or choosing to holiday in the regions due to overseas travel being off the cards for the foreseeable future. The time is therefore ideal for a bold vision for the future of the foreshore, one that will see us continue to evolve this stunning yet underutilised natural asset and further increase the attractiveness and the livability of our entire city. Before we hear from Justin with further details, I would like to thank Senator Rex Patrick and Member for Giles Eddie Hughes for being here this evening. Ultimately, any solutions to challenges before us will require collaboration from both state and federal governments. So I welcome their involvement in our community, in particular to this issue, and look forward to working together for the best possible outcomes for our great city. I would also like to highlight that should you have any genuine concerns about what you believe to be inappropriate behaviour by councillors or other members of the council in relation to this issue, I strongly encourage you to raise it with relevant authorities. I thank you everyone for your time.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I'm Justin Commons. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Council, and my role is to try and provide as quickly as possible some of the facts and information that led to Council's decision made in November. Can I start off by saying that many of the people in this room have been residents of Whyalla for a long time, and I think many people in this room will know that you might consider the issues that we've got now is a legacy issue that's probably been many, many years in the making. Some people I spoke to have indicated that some of the issues that we're dealing with now have probably been around for 10 or 15 years. I think it's easy with hindsight for some people to say that clearly some decisions that have been made in the past or some judgments that people have exercised in the past may not have been the best in terms of where that leads us to today. The reason I just mentioned that is that the current council cannot deal with or change what has happened in the past. And I'll very shortly talk about the chronology that led up to council making the decision. Myself as the Chief Executive Officer and the current council can only deal with the matter that's before us, and we can't change the past, but we can certainly look to influence how we move forward. The reason for that bit of preamble is that there is a long story to the history of the cafe, and in the interest of time and efficiency, I'm just going to focus on last year. So a quick summary of the chronology of events. 28th of February last year, the tenant, Nick, his 5-year lease expired, and at that time the council granted a 6-month extension to enable the council to conduct a public expression of interest process to seek a leasee for the premises going forward. The current leasee would have been able to express an interest through that process, and noting that this process is a requirement of the Local Government Act. The tenant had previously offered to make some improvements to the building. However, the capital outlay required to the building would have been considered as part of the expression of interest process. On the 1st of July, Council's Environmental Health Officer conducted a food safety assessment of the cafe. That was a routine assessment consistent with what you call business as usual. But what was identified was that there was 14 non-conformances with the Food Act at that time. The tenant was provided a report with those non-conformances and provided with 6 months to address those non-conformances. And I'll talk a little bit more about those shortly. Fast forward 6 months, 4th of August, Council advised the tenant through an appropriate notice issued that Council did not, would still propose to do an expression of interest process as required in the Local Government Act, and that the lease arrangements would change over to a periodic monthly lease thereafter. I think all of you will remember back in around that time, COVID was playing havoc, as Gabrielle mentioned earlier, and that expression of interest process was delayed both due to the pandemic as well as the consequential unavailability of council resources. 16th of October, the tenant put in a service request with council to undertake some maintenance works, and upon the initial inspection, this matter was escalated given the observed extent of works that was needed to the building. As a result of that first inspection, on the 4th of November, Council's Environmental Health Officer, Civil Works Coordinator and Building Assessment Officer did an inspection and documented the situation that existed at that time. Very soon after that date, as CEO, I was made aware of the situation, and I was very concerned that the business was being conducted in a council-owned building in breach of legislation and regulations that relate to work, health and safety, food preparation and the Building Code of Australia. As a result of my concerns, I requested a report to be produced as efficiently and as quickly as possible, which was then presented to Council on the 30th of November at a special meeting of Council to consider this matter. The subject will come up multiple times. There's been reference to secret meetings. I'll start the batting by saying that Council's preference is always for decisions to be made public and for all discussions to be held public. But there are times when matters must be considered in confidence to both respect and protect the commercial and legal interests of both other parties, in this case the tenant, as well as Council. This was the case in this situation, as Council didn't want to compromise either Council's or the tenant's rights and interests. Again, this is allowed for and expected within the Local Government Act. The decision and the reason for the decision, however, is public and is on Council's website. Just turning to the next slide, just providing a little bit more detail in terms of some of the issues with the building. So the inspection on the 4th of November confirmed a number of major issues with the cafe portion of the building, not being compliant with Building Code and Food Act requirements. Work surfaces decayed, there's electrical work being needed to both sockets and the deep fryer. There was exposed electrical cabling, issues with the extraction fan required for ventilation, holes in walls and floors and tiles in a state of disrepair, insufficient room within the building for its use, so no separation between cleaning activities and food preparation activities, insufficient plumbing, insufficient storage areas, and a general issue or concern with the general cleanliness and tightness of the facility. Next slide. Just working through some of these. Hand basin on the right hand side, There's no plumbing to take away dirty water. The hand basin, as you can see, is not in a particularly useful position for access. Next slide. The building has got very limited space and storage. You can see on the left-hand side the challenge that the tenant had in terms of storing matters within inside the building, and certainly some items, including freezers and the like, needed to be stored outside the building. Also on that slide you'll see floors, and on the next slide you'll see holes in walls, ceilings and floors. I know there's been some discussion about how much would it cost to fix this work. Anyone who's restored an old car, quick show of hands, anyone ever restored a car? There's got to be someone here. Yeah, a couple, thank you for those. Or anyone who's done any renovations to their home will know that you start off expecting to do this amount of work and spend this amount of money. And when you start to do work on an old building or an old car, you very quickly find that the extent of work and the cost of work just keeps growing and growing and growing. Those people that put their hand up for their car restorations, did it cost you as much as you thought to restore, or did it cost much more? No, I think I made my point. So the question about the level of investment, if you bear with me, we'll take questions after. Yeah, hold the question, we'll come to questions.
So this is regarding the CEOs of the council. Now, what you're saying here, I understand. But why did the council allow the town and that, if the building was in such a disrepair, why would it allow them to keep trading? Doing this building up, to put the tenants out, to spend the money doing it up. What happened when it wasn't put into the district,
Well, thank you so much for that question. But as I discussed at the beginning, if it's okay with you, we'll hold the questions until the question and comment time.
I understand that, Adam.
Yes, so we're not going to answer that question right now.
Up here, putting the point to the owner of that cafe. The point, the owner of the cafe is only what he had.
Yes.
Now, the council knew that it was a disrepair, unsafe, unhealthy, and yet they still allowed it to happen.
Yeah, all your points are very valid. I'll try to address those issues, and certainly through question and answer we'll cover that. So to the question of how much money has council invested, what is it invested in, when did that investment occur, and why ultimately is the building in its current state. So up on the slide here you will see that what council has invested over a number of years. So between 2011 and 2017, 438,000 has been spent on the building. Now, in anyone's language, that's a fair bit of money. Okay. The main element of that expenditure was in 2014-15, where there was an extension of the cafe. So within that 189,000, some of the works that was included was the southern extension with a conversion of the brick wall to a glass wall, sewage and water pipework, ceramic, kitchen and store tiles, new floor tiles in the southern extension, painting the kitchens and storeroom and dining area, roof pitch realignment and gutter fall realignment, and new evaporative air conditioning. So I come back to my comment before that once you start spending money, it doesn't take long to add up. Most of that expenditure was actually to improve the amenity and also the accessibility of the facility, particularly for people with disabilities. What that work didn't address was some of the fundamental issues with the building, which I touched on in the previous slide. And if I use the term trying to put a square peg in a round hole, over time the cafe has been expected to deliver a certain service, yet the facilities didn't really lend themselves to that service. And I'm sure anyone who's had a chance to have a look at those photos will understand that there's, just the segregation between the cleaning area and the food preparation area would require potentially a new wall being put in. To expand the footprint of the building to allow the freezers to be inside the building would require an extension of the building. So all of this talks to time and money. And I think the key, one of the things that I've observed since I've come along is that there has been a real priority given to keeping the cafe open. We know how important it is to the community, and it's very evident, particularly in more recent years, that there hasn't been the investment required in the building to ensure that it remains fit for purpose. And that is the challenge that we have right here before us today. So as the Mayor mentioned, by the end of 2020, it was imperative for the Council to address the issues that had been identified and the consequential legal position of both the tenant and Council. When it came to our, particularly my attention, but our attention collectively, and upon advice from our insurers and our legal advisors, we could not allow the trading to continue as it was at that point in time in the building, given the condition and the issues with the building. We in short, the operations were in breach of state law, and we simply could just not allow for the existing arrangements to continue. As mentioned, the immediacy of the threats, both to public health and also obviously the commercial and legal positions of both the tenant and the council, that drove very quick response from the administration to prepare that report to go to the council on the 30th of November. To the point raised before as to if the things were that bad, why did council actually allow the operations to continue for a further month? Council had a long deliberation about the different options available to it at that time and the risks associated with to continue operation versus not, particularly given the busy period. I can say that there was a long discussion and ultimately Council came to the conclusion that we wanted to at least provide the lessee with 1 month's notice in line with the lease agreement that was in place to enable the business to be wound up in an orderly fashion. Following making it, or at the same time, we had some discussions about, well, how do we provide food and beverage services on the foreshore, given the imminent closure of the cafe. And my staff have worked hard to try and provision marquees, tables, chairs, and arrange for food vans and the like to be there as a very short-term solution. We know that it's not a long-term solution, and we'll unpack that a little bit more, but we're mindful that people love their coffee and love to be able to sit down and, on the foreshore. So from my reading of all the facts, I can understand why people feel the way they feel in terms of the decisions that have been made in the past that bring us to where we are today. But I reinforce that Council just could not allow to the operations to continue effectively in direct contravention with law. I think I'll just say one last comment and then I'll hand back to Gabrielle. The penultimate decision that Council made on the 30th of November was around protecting the interests of both the current tenant and the Council, as well as the broader community. And whilst we know that it was going to be an unpopular decision, we stand by that as the right decision.
Thank you. And a very important matter now is to invite Senator Rex Patrick up to the stage to speak, to present the petition to the Mayor. And again, I thank the 1,500 or so people who have been involved in this petition. We'll have this presentation from Senator Patrick, then I'll ask Eddie Hughes to speak, and then we'll move to the open mics part of the session where we will take any questions that are available. Senator Patrick.
By 1,642 people, of which 1,275 have a Whyalla postcode. So there are some people outside of the community and I've seen on my Facebook post that have indicated that they love going to that cafe as they pass by Whyalla on their way to somewhere else. So look, I do have a petition here that I would like to give to the Mayor. It's probably not conforming with the local council standards, but I ask if it's not, if you could perhaps even just agree to table it.
Thank you. And this will be tabled next week, our full council meeting. Sorry, apologies everyone. Thank you for this. Thank you, Senator Rex Patrick, for this, and I appreciate this. We will table this next week now for the council meeting.
So I just want to address another issue. She just said that the Mayor said that she will table that at the next council meeting. So
that's all.
So thank you. So I think that's an expression of the will of a number of people getting that sort of number in a very short period of time. The second thing I want to talk to talk briefly about is the issue of secrecy, and I know the Mayor won't like me saying that word, but I find it troubling that we've got to a point where we're all together tonight. We've had lots of information, and I thank Justin for that information being put onto the website. But we've had an issue that's pretty important, apparently, to most of the community in Whyalla. It really hasn't surfaced at all until over the last couple of weeks, when it was too late for the community to engage. And that is a real shame. And I work at the Senate, where we talk about a lot of issues, a lot of important issues, and I'm not, they're different issues, but your cafe is an important issue as well. And we do that very openly. Everyone can see me when I stand up in the Senate. Everyone can see everything I say, everything all the other senators say. Everyone can see how I vote. And you can hold me to account at the next election. There are rules inside the Local Government Act that do allow councils to close down meetings for good purpose, and that is to conduct business that may affect a whole range of things, legal related issues, but also commercial issues. But I put to you that and I'm someone who, in the last couple of weeks, won a confidentiality claim against the Prime Minister's office against barristers for the Prime Minister. I'm a bit of a specialist in this area. The confidentiality provisions are meant to be read very narrowly, which means looking at things like trade secrets or something that really does cause harm, and they must be balanced against the public interest. That is in the Act. And so I'll be taking a bit of a look at things moving forward, looking to see how this is, how business is being conducted in Whyalla, because I don't believe for a moment that there is any corruption. I don't believe that there is any conspiracy involved in this. But one of the ways in which you dispel all of those sorts of theories and ideas is just to be open and transparent. And moving forward, I would just ask the council to be very, very careful when it goes into what we call in-camera or into confidential discussions. In my view, there's no reason why the community could not have been made aware a year ago that the cafe was coming up for renewal, what its plans were, some of the problems that existed with the council building, and indeed also with the beach, the beachfront being upgraded. In my view, there should not be lots and lots of very closed discussions that then result in a tender going out. The community can be engaged at every step along the way, including input into the tender itself. Obviously the tender responses are confidential, but I'd just like to see a little bit more openness and transparency. And again, I do not, whilst I've let people put things on my webpage that says that where they've accused the council, which is a political body, and in this country we're allowed to say things about political bodies, so I haven't censored anything that has been put onto my website, provided it didn't mention any particular person's name. Whilst people have said things, I don't believe those things that have been said, but you know, lies is a fantastic disinfectant.
What a terrific expression, light is a fantastic disinfectant. I love it. I've never heard that before. Could I invite Mr. Eddie Hughes up here to speak to? Thank you. Can I call you Eddie?
Well, it is a pleasure to be here tonight and to see so many residents turn up for this meeting. And I think it's a reflection of the importance of the cafe to the community. Now, I'm not going to be up here having a go at council. I bought into the debate just before Christmas. I had issues about the timing of it. I had issues about the closure of the cafe. And I guess I've been consistent from the beginning in trying to find some sort of compromise so that people can have somewhere to go and sit and have a coffee and have a pie, pasty, whatever, but to do so within the regulatory and the legal framework. And council have been struggling with that. They were privy to a lot more information than I was. My position has moved on a bit, and now that we're at a position where the cafe is closed, the council is obliged. They were obliged previously with the lapsing of the lease to go out to expressions of interest. So what I would say to the council is go out to expressions of interest as soon as possible. Decide what it is that you're going to do, so that people in this community can have a kiosk or some sort of cafe down there at the beach to go to. There's a lot of people were upset about about food vans, and I think food vans are great. And in my view, the more the merrier. The more competition, the better. But a lot of people still require somewhere, especially some of our older residents. They require somewhere to go and sit out in the wind and have a bit of a chill way. So I think we need to move forward and get that in place. Rex has said some important things about confidentiality, about openness and transparency, and I've always been someone that has believed in maximising transparency. There are times when councils have to, behind their closed doors, make some decisions, but I guess the timing of it and the involvement of the community is something that I was concerned about. Now, I want to defend the council. I actually think social media is often an incredibly toxic platform. And the number of people that have been sharing in our community absolute bullshit is incredibly disturbing. So I know every single one of those councillors, and for someone to come out and say the council is corrupt, well, that's a reflection on all of those people that have lived in our community for years. If you're going to come out and say something like that, back it up with evidence. Go to the ICANN. Don't be a coward using social media to denigrate people collectively. So there's a plan that has been floated around, and it's a developer's plan. I call it mud map with numbers on it. The only plan that counts when it comes to the beach is this one. It's part of the Whyalla development plan. Sets out the zoning provisions and all of the conditions that govern how that area is going to be developed. And I would encourage people to go and have a look at that development plan. It's because it has been. We've had people on social media saying access to the beach is going to be denied. The beach is going to be privatised. It's going to be harder to get to the beach. The controls in this plan are explicit when it comes to those things. Because development should not diminish the ability of the public to use and enjoy the coast or gain access to the foreshore. There's a whole raft of other conditions.
Should not.
Should not.
Shall not.
It says should not. In order, there's a whole raft of other provisions here, and I would encourage you to go and read it. Any changes to those provisions are a long and protracted process. The second thing is, the council doesn't own the land. The council cannot get rid of land. Nearly all of that land down there is Crown land, with the exception of the footprints of the Foreshore Motel and most of the caravan park. All of that other land is Crown land on the council's care and control. So there's a whole raft of state legislation, planning regulations that govern what happens down there. Now, many years ago, I was in this very same room, and the council, at least the council officers, wanted to run a road through the foreshore area where the kids' playground is now, and there was a massive reaction by the public. So the consultants' report, the recommendations from the senior officers were ignored. And the community wishes largely were carried out. Now there's going to be a foreshore planning exercise. I gather it's an open sheet exercise. It's got nothing to do with these developers, and I could say something about those developers, but I'm not going to in this forum. It's got nothing to do with these developers. It's about our community working together to do the best we can for that great asset that we've got, which is the foreshore. So this is about collaboration and cooperation and open and transparent processes. And all of us in this room, myself included, can make sure that that's what the council will do. But I've got confidence that it will. So please, do not, and there's one or two people I can see here that were engaged in those accusations of corruption. Do not do that. And call those people out, because we want to work together as a community to get the best possible result for our community. But in the short term, get the CAF open in some form so people can sit down and have a coffee.
Thank you so much. We now are going to move to the open mic part of this, and just to let you know that Justin will be speaking a little beneath. Are going to have microphones in a COVID-safe way. We'd like to invite you to come and line up near those microphones in order to have your turn to ask the question or make a comment. I'll keep the questions or comments to less than 5 minutes maximum in the spirit of trying to get as many voices as possible. And Justin and the Mayor will be sitting there with a microphone ready to take and answer your questions as best they can. If a question is not able to be answered, we will take it on notice, ask for your name and reply to you personally in the next week. And anyone else who doesn't get a chance to ask their question or make their comment, we really and seriously invite you to put something in writing, and please give it to us tonight, to any of the staff members at the end. So now, where are you, microphone ladies? Here and there. Okay, so could I invite people to come and form an orderly queue behind each other, much as they do in writers' festivals, in order to make some comments. And please direct your statements or questions to the Mayor and Justin. Thank you. And may I ask that you introduce yourself to the group first before you begin? Yes, you'd like to line up on that side as well? We'll start on this side. What is your first person?
Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm Julianne Wilson.
Hello, sorry, what was that name?
Julianne Wilson.
Julianne, thank you. Please address the question or comment.
We, the public, would like an answer within 7 days as to how the Beach Café is going to open. We do not want it to go to lease and go through all that bubble. We want the cafeteria with the coffee machine, not a pod, not a instant thing from, Salvation Army or any of those places. We want a proper place to sit. We can have everything in there that the caravans have. They have pies, pasties, sausage rolls, thick shakes, milkshakes. We can board up the kitchen if that's what you're really worried about. There's never ever been any food poisoning from that or any of Anna's and Nick's establishments ever. So can we please have that table that we get a response within 7 days?
response in terms of options available later tonight, so we'll canvass those. There will be a survey that we'll be conducting very shortly, one of the, if I can just very briefly say, part of that survey will be to look at unpicking the difference between a cafe and a kiosk. You started by saying you wanted a cafe, which is pretty much what we've got at present, but then you move towards a kiosk facility with ice cream, soft drinks and the like. Yeah, so we'll need to unpick that because as we've stated earlier tonight, the cafe in its current operation, in the current building, is not an option, but we can look at how we can do something different.
Thank you very much. Can we have a question from this side of the room? Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for very, very emotional and very, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to express myself. On behalf of my wife and me, thanks everybody. Thanks to City Council for giving us the opportunity to do what we did. I thought we're going to a partnership with the Whyalla community, City Council, as our friends. As a partnership, great partnerships, friendships, and the like. And we managed this to break the borders past Whyalla and beyond. I always strive myself to be the best, and always I like to have the challenges, but all these in the plain fields. And 5 years ago, I got the list, as everyone knows, and City Council choose the purpose of the business. The menu, extended liquor license, so. The first thing I did, as I got the license, I asked City Council, is the building fit for liquor license? No problem. So I went from there. I had to do my business as best I can, in the best I could, to please all these people, make them happy. And I thought my turn will come. So I'm still here, I'm proud. Thank you so much. Thanks City Council, whoever's helped more. And I look forward to do more and more because I do not believe I'm done yet. I might be a thank you myself. My wife is here. I'm here to service the public at the best I could. I apologize. Sometimes some meals was pretty slow because it is what it is. My staff sometimes could be a frustrating place to work. And impossible to be the boss, the happy, the smiling, the coffee and everything else. But I apologize, but we did our best.
Thank you so much.
And we're happy and look forward to do even more, better.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. Appreciate your words, Nick. Thank you very much, and it's great to see the love that the people of the community have for you and your service at your business. So thank you.
May we have this next person from here, please?
Hello, my name is Bob Morris, a long-time resident of Whyalla, and I see the 400 people here as representative of the 22,000 who live in this town. I'm disappointed that the council has found itself unable in the 3-page document that they've put out to find the positives or the small things that could have been done to probably get that business back up and running. And I am disappointed that they are unable in that whole document to come up with a positive as far as the Beach Café is concerned. I've travelled right around this state, York Peninsula, Eyre Peninsula, and the southern areas of this state. And in every seaside town, there is a beach cafe. The only exceptions that I can think of are Port Pirie, where they build a smelter, and Port Augusta, where they don't have much of a beach. I think it's very important that the council reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Those words, and I think that Justin, when he elaborates in the next section of the meeting, will be addressing that. It seems to be the test that the community want to know what's happening moving forward.
Thanks, Luke. Thank you very much. And may I go to this side of the room?
Hello, my name's Stephen Fisher. I've lived in Whyalla for about 40 years now. Personally, I've known Nick for about 20 years, since he had the Jenkins Avenue deli, which was, I always thought was run very well. Personally, I've done some jobs for him over the years as well. But initially, I believe that the council back in the day approached Nick to come and run the Beach Café because it was unsuccessfully run by previous tenants. He's made it a success, as far as I can tell, over the years. Everyone else seems to think so as well. But according to that, in 14-15, when they did the extension and whatever assessment that that current council did, why wasn't it? It's quite evident that that kitchen area was never big enough for anything. A van, let alone, why wasn't that the issue addressed then for a bigger kitchen? And now, sounds the previous councils have made an error. Why isn't the current council willing to rectify that situation that Nick was left with?
Yeah, sorry. I spoke to a number of people before the session started, and one of the responses or comments I made is that I think for many years we've tried to put a square peg in a round hole. We've expected from that facility something that it was never originally designed for, and we're always going to struggle to deliver what the community's come to expect. We can't change what's happened in the past. We've provided some facts in terms of what has been invested previously in the building, $400,000. The question that we'll get to later tonight is, do we put more money into that building, which is an old building? Yep. And we'll get to that shortly. Do we invest a significant amount of money into the existing building? Do we repurpose the building? Do we build new? There's a number of options, and we'll get to that a little bit further tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Question now from over here.
My name is Rudy Klitschik. I'm a small-time builder in Whyalla for the last 60 years. Just wondering, the Foreshore Cafe, that's owned by the council, they have owners?
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay. It is the owner's duty to provide all the maintenance on their buildings. Why isn't it not done on the council? You spent nearly $500,000 in 10 years. You're saying, but one little hand washing basin, half a dozen power points, that should have been taken care of by the owners.
Thank you very much for your comment. And from over this side.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Howard. Justin, you started by telling us we weren't looking at the past, but I missed every figure for how much it actually costs to bring the building up to a safer standard. And I'd like to thank the council for their time and being here today. And my question to the council is, do you really have confidence that food caravans are going to be safer for people to eat from than the way you
I really do. I've seen caravans. And then that leads to the next question. If the council's got a position of liability into the food that gets dispensed from the cafe, does that mean every other business owner that's rented their premises out to someone that cooks food, are they, because they're actually the owner of the premises, are they too responsible for the leasee's actions and what happens out of that?
I missed the first part, but I got the second too. So the question, the second...
You started off by saying you weren't going back into the past, but what you did is you gave me lots of figures that were from the past, but I never saw any figures for the future of what's needing to be done.
thanks, Steve. Good question. So, to the first question, how much is it going to cost to bring the building up to standard? We need, in the first instance, to confirm that the committee wants to have a cafe there, and that we need to bear with me. We know that it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. Yep. So the question was, how much is it going to cost? It's going to cost a couple of $100,000. I don't know the exact figure. To address all of the issues with the building. The question about the food vans, is that a compatible service with the bricks and mortar building of the cafe? The answer is clearly no. The food vans are an alternative short-term solution in lieu of the cafe in the short term. Again, I need to emphasise, if the community indicate that they want a cafe and they are prepared for council to invest the money in the cafe, that we'll take that on board and we'll look at that. The last one was around...
I think they've just about covered it. It's clear too that we've been told tonight that there's a survey that's been produced now that will be spoken about towards the end of the evening, where more questions will be put to you about the distinctions of what it is that you're dreaming and wishing for your beachside cafe and provision of coffee inside the context of the redevelopment. And there'll be a bit more about the redevelopment momentarily. So you see how the present intersects with the future here. Yes, Justin?
The third question was around the obligations of owners of buildings and what liability they have, and do they have the same issues that council has for buildings they own? The answer is yes, and that's where council has actually got a double-edged issue, that on the one hand we're a landlord, but we're also a regulator of both food safety requirements, environmental health requirements, as well as the building code. It would be hypercritical of council on the one hand to turn a blind eye to the issues that we've got with our own building as a landlord, when we're out there regulating compliance with state legislation in relation to buildings that are owned by other owners. To the question, particular in terms of risk, if anyone has a fall, an accident, an issue in any building, the owner of the building will invariably have some level of liability or exposure to what happened, even though they've tendered it out to another party.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Helen Parker. I was watching those pictures of the inside of Nick's Cafe, and congratulations, Nick. You ran a really good business, you and your family, your wife, and how the hell you managed to work around that inside of that building. Why on earth wasn't a HAI order, or whatever you want to call it, put on that building before Nick actually started running a cafe in there? I was absolutely mortified. The council had an obligation to Nick and his wife and the staff that actually worked in that building. And I'm sorry, but as the council are the landlord for that business, that building, they have failed. Absolutely categorically failed in every aspect. There are so many health issues in that building. You have got water right next to power. You haven't got a sewerage system for the water to run away from the tap, from the hand basin. It was stored in a bucket. There was not enough room for Nick to put freezers and fridges inside that building. It was inadequate before it even begun. The council have not spent any money, there was a blind, on that building since 2015. The council have categorically failed in every aspect of Nick's business. We need a cafe at the beach in Whyalla, and I want to see the council put their hand in their pocket, put their excuses away, and give us back a cafe at the beach like a lot of regional beachside towns have.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much. And one more comment from over here. We've got about 7 more minutes maximum for the commentary part of the meeting.
Yeah, hi, my name's Dave Inglis. My comments directed to Eddie, actually, on a comment that he had regarding what we should feel about our security about the use of the foreshore, and that is that it's Crown land. Well, Crown land, I assume, is Commonwealth land as well, or similar. But the airport was also Commonwealth land before it was handed over to Council to do what they want with. How do we know that's not going to happen with Foreshore?
Eddie, would you like to come to the mic and demonstrate that microphone? That will do.
Okay, it's not Commonwealth land, it is a state land, and there's a whole range of controls of a state land. Now, I mentioned that at a local level, there's the actual Development Act itself. So if you're going to do anything down there that's out of keeping with what's there at the moment, it requires a rezoning exercise. Anyone that's been involved in amendments to development plans know that they're protracted their processes, and that there's public engagement involved, depending upon what is on offer in those processes. There's all sorts of government agencies involved in those processes as well. When it comes to the disposal of state land, of Crown land, there's also a whole range of legislative requirements. So it does not 100% preclude changes and significant changes down at the beach, but the number of barriers that you've got to get through, and especially given it's in a coastal area, are so complex and elaborate, it's the overwhelming odds it's not going to happen. Now, I use the example of consultants and planners wanting to put a road through to divide the Adirine Gardens from the beach quite a few years ago. A meeting like this here at the Westlands, and the council listened to the community and did not go ahead with those changes. Now, I actually take the council at its word when it goes, there's going to be extensive community consultation about what is going to happen on the beach and the surrounding lands. And this is our beach. Yeah, so you just need to get involved, and the council will reflect, and there'll be democratic debate about what people want to see there, don't want to see there. There'll be differences of view, but eventually a position will be settled on, and we all just want the best for our community. So legislatively, from a planning perspective, and from a land disposal perspective, there's a whole raft of protection.
Thank you, Eddie. That's great. Now may we have a comment from this side of the room, please?
Hi, my name's John.
Sit down and let everyone have a say.
I'm sorry, I'm going to extend the time until 7:15 for the open mic bit, and then leave the last set of wrap-up comments about the future redevelopment until the last piece at the end. Does that sound like a reasonable idea? That's the best we can do. Can I see a show of hands as to whether extending it to 7:15 is enough for everybody? So we've got some differences of opinions. Okay. Okay. Let's please go on with the questions now. Thank you. All comments.
Yeah, my name's John. I've the last few months been doing the Clovis job for Nick voluntarily on weekends, and until I was doing that, I was totally unaware of how popular the cafe was in the way of community, and also how much money it would be bringing into Whyalla through tourists. One example, 2 weeks ago, there was a family in at the cafe. They travelled 8 hours from Narra Court, and they were on the way to their friend's place, to stay at their friend's place for a week at Port Lincoln. Their friends had told them, make sure you make Whyalla Foreshore Cafe your stop before coming on to us. So they'd driven 8 hours before stopping and spending their money.
We will take questions from all of the people who are standing right now. The people who are standing up in line right now will get a chance to have their comments made before the meeting closes tonight. Is that all right with everybody? Okay. Now, Nick, we have heard from you. You, of course, can speak again, but if you could keep it short.
Yes, the last thing I want to say is I say to all the information about my friend Jason Clay, wonderful man, and my friends City Council, talking about the building next door is fundraising. It's different. My building is commercial. I took my son, he's got his job there, so I mean, I can see completely the way commercial means dollar-to-dollar value. The City Council might have to explain to the public, myself, what means $50,000 a year rent. Because to his knowledge, $50,000 a year equity calculates to $1 million investment. Thank you, Jason, several $100,000. This building, $50,000 a year rent income is $1 million investment. It's commercial.
Thank you. Mayor, the comments, please.
To the council members, some of those here seniors, you were here 2014-15, invite me, they had a problem to get the best tender. And they did say, the cafe ready, perfect, fantastic, and the builder did great job. We're very proud of it. So we've got a problem now to pick the best tenant who will give the best service to the public. Well, today, that cafe reached $1.3 million. Turnover? Yes. Kiosk kitchen. $1.3 million, employing 10 people, some cashiers, some outside helping staff, and all this must be to pay $50,000 a year rent. You understand, this have to be very stressful. Because every year, my rent goes up. And I'm very proud for the public of Whyalla to say, for dollar value, for $1 value, I pay very, very good rental, and I'm very happy and I'm very proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. May we have a comment from here, please?
My name's John Scott and I've been a resident of Whyalla since 1965. I did serve on the Whyalla Council in the late 1990s. My wife served on the council in the 80s. I mentioned that because when he was on council, there was a major redevelopment of the Whyalla Foreshore in accordance with the Barwick plan. If you look at the plan, you'll find that it called for the development of a central building for community use, including a cafe. I want to make 9 comments. The first is regarding the handouts which you had on your seat here tonight. There's lots of contentious points involved in them, but I want to draw your attention to 2 errors of fact. One states that the building was not built for a cafe. I've already alluded to that, how it was developed in the 80s. The second says that, I'll turn the page, the second point says that a cafe is not a community facility, but rather a commercial business. I believe it is a community facility. It was built there specifically to provide community services, and it's just been the path that councillors have taken to appoint other bodies to run it for them. Council would be at liberty to run it itself if it so wished. The second point relates to process and actions taken during the past 6 months or so by officers. The point is that they should have been taken a year earlier before the 5-year lease expired. That would allow timely identification of issues and an opportunity to fix them up before going out on another expression of interest process. The third point is that council must put in place controls to ensure that this sort of process failure does not occur again, either with this public facility or other public facilities. Point 4, relating to the capital expenditure, as another lady has alluded, hardly any of that money has been spent in the last 5 years, only $13,000 for some blinds. Most of the money was spent 8-9 years ago and it related to the public toilets. This implies a disinterest and disengagement by both councillors and council officers in this facility and its continuing use. 5 point relates to council secrecy. If you peruse the council agendas over the last 5 or 6 years, you'll see that many matters are discussed in camera, and high on the list for frequent discussions of that nature is the Foreshore Cafe. Point 6. The current closure is a specific example and a serious example of failed council process. Council officers and councillors have an obligation right now to actively and innovatively devise reinstatement of the cafe as a public facility for provision of public services. In order for people to be able to contribute to that process tonight, we need a picture up on the screen there of the layout of the building. Can that be done before this meeting closes? If not, why was that not considered and arranged?
I don't believe that can be done before this meeting closes. I don't believe we have that picture here, but that would be so, I think, happy.
Speaking of innovation, my 8th point is that councillors and officers have been very innovative elsewhere in the city, namely at the wetlands, to come up with a facility there that involves shipping containers. I can't believe that we can't do something to reinstate our cafe at the Foreshore and quickly. And finally, we need a report as soon as possible as to how council is going to remedy this failed situation.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you so much for your comments. There's a lot to refer to this question now.
Yeah, g'day, my name's Nathan Bolam, born in Whyalla. So we've taken $50,000 a year from Nick for rent, but there's nothing being spent on the building for the last 3 years. Where's the money gone?
Thank you, Justin.
All income that council receives goes, I'm not sure if you're talking about the bank account or where the money's actually gone to in terms of being spent. Council has a budget. Every year we consult the budget with the community in terms of the services, facilities that council provides, where we get our income from, where we expend it. So the short answer is it was received and has been expended in line with council's adopted and approved budget.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're not taking new people to the row, or we won't be able to finish at 7:30 at this stage, so please, madam.
Alan Dyson. I know we've been mostly focused on the cafe, but there is the toilet complex and then next to that surf life saving. Now that is one basic complex, one footprint. So council needs to not just focus on the cafe, even though that's our main concern, but the surf life saving building is also in disrepair. And they need to have somewhere in that footprint to work efficiently.
Thank you for that comment, Mayor. Would you like to make a comment in reply, Mayor?
No, that's a very, very good comment, and that is something that council is considering as well as part of the Foreshore. Yeah, so thank you, very well said.
Thank you. And this person, last person from this side, and then the rest of this group.
My name's Helen, and I've lived in Whyalla since 1984. I'm a bit shocked tonight to see how out of touch with community the council is. And my question's related really to a previous answer that was given, when the answer given was if the community wants a cafe, that will be considered. If! I mean, how out of touch are you that you don't already realise we want that, and how much more confirmation do you need?
Thank you very much. And this is a very clear expression right here, right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess everybody knows who I am.
I'm sorry, I haven't.
It's Tom Antonio.
Thanks.
I served on council for 12 years as a councillor, 8 years as a deputy mayor, and of course as an acting mayor in the most turbulent time this city's ever seen. Closure was never an option for the steelworks, and closure was never an option for the cafe. We were deprived of that. We didn't have an opportunity to make sure closure was not an option, which is very sad. Now, I was very much involved with Nick, and Nick is here, and I heard him speak, and he's right. We put some things in place to make sure that we got the right facilities for the cafe. I was involved with the council solicitors, I was involved with Nick's solicitors, and with another councillor, and also one of the engineer consultants that we employed as a council. Yes, I was very involved. I was one of the main people working with Nick to make sure, and Nick will agree, he was there, to make sure that we had those facilities. He's right. There were things that were not right at the cafe. Things that the council was accountable and responsible as a landlord. Now, there are 3 councillors here, and the mayor was there, and the mayor was well aware of the inadequacies of the cafe. Absolutely. And for 3 years, they sat on the laurels and they've done absolutely nothing. Where was the project manager who was supposed to project manage to make sure that we agreed with Nick, and Nick is there, he can agree with this, he can choose not to, of course, but he can tell you that we agreed to fix those problems 3 years ago. And they weren't done. So you've got to ask the question, why weren't they done? Now, to go further on that, we had another incident with the jetty. The jetty was unsafe. There was an engineering report put in about the jetty. It was put under the table, people sat on it for 2 years till it was raised. One of the councillors, rightly so, raised, why have we sat on this report for so long? To the point that WorkSafe said it was unsafe for the community. The council sat and we argued and we debated what we should do. There were a couple of us that said, no, we need a new jetty. And the motion was put that we put a new jetty, and that jetty will be iconic. It was $3.5 million at the time. There were councillors that stringently opposed the new jetty, and there's some of them that are sitting here right now. And look what the vision that those councillors had for the new jetty and what it's done to our community today. Now we've got a $9 million jetty, not $3.5 million, and we can't find $300,000 to give us a cafe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your time is nearly up, and I would like to say, as you've just described that importance of visioning for the future with a bold plan for the future, that is the closing discussion that we must have to put this discussion about the cafe inside that vision which the council will rely on this community to inform them about. So I take your point, they seem like valid points to me, but I now would like to suggest you wrap up your comments in the next minute.
Ask yourselves this, where is the transparency? There is no, you used to go to council and used to stand on the podium and ask questions. You can't do that anymore because they've wiped that out. There is no more recording of the council minutes audio. Why? Because there were councils that held other councils accountable, and because you held them accountable and you tried to speak the truth, what did they do? They got rid of the audio recordings. You can't listen, none of us can listen what happens in a council meeting. The only way that they want to do this is under a cloak of secrecy. There was a motion put to have live streaming, so all of us can see how councillors conduct themselves in a council meeting, because we have an ageing population that can't go to a council meeting. They want to sit in the comfort of their homes, a cold night, hot night, wherever it may be, to see how our councillors conduct themselves. And you can't do that.
Thank you so much. This speak to the light.
One more point.
One more point. No, I'm sorry.
Our previous CEO who left this community, went to Burnside Council, and the first thing he did was implemented live streaming, and that was Chris Cowley. So I put that to the council. Why haven't we got live streaming?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the points that we've heard. We're speaking about the light and the antiseptic value of light. And I think that's already been raised as an issue that's important and relevant to everyone here. May I take your comment, please?
Yeah, hi, how you doing? My name's Sean, and as a owner on the Foreshore area, well not owner, but manage the boxing club. Also in my lease agreement, as I assume in Nick's, there would be a Rental and Commercial Lease Act of 1995, which since the building is the council's, that's the leaseor, aren't they obligated to do these things? And then also, there's also speak of compensation in the Act. So this is dependent in what area that the council is acting upon on that Rental and Commercial Lease Agreement Act of 1995. So some clarity on that, and then what area they acted upon. I understand health and safety, but I'm not really sure where that acts on that Act. That would be greatly appreciated. And then there's steps, because that Act actually trumps all lease agreement and actually overpowers the lease. So.
Thank you very much for your comment. And Justin, do you want to make a comment about that? It may be something that you'd like to take up in more detail later. So look, thank you everybody. I know that there's a lot more to be said, a lot more commentary, a lot more deep thinking, a lot more opinion. Not all the same opinion, but passionately felt. And that is very obvious to me, standing in front of all of you tonight. And I respect and appreciate the passion that's been revealed here about this issue, and I'm glad you're here. We are running out of time, but I would like to make time for Justin to speak briefly about the redevelopment situation. Obviously, this is just the beginning. This is not the end of anything at all. This is absolutely the beginning. And after that, Justin will refer to the survey that's going to be sent out to you, I think, within a week. And then I will wrap up, as I think it'll be more like 7:35 now. Thank you, Justin.
Okay, so most importantly, where to from here? So there's been a number of conversations or comments made about options going forward, and there's clear sentiments from the room that there's a strong desire for a cafe in the future. Sorry, can't hear me? Sorry, hopefully that's better. I'll just quickly repeat myself. So now turning to our attention to where to from here and what are the options. Clearly there's been tonight an expression of a strong desire to have a cafe on the foreshore. So the options that we've got in very broad terms is that we either make significant or insignificant level of investment, depending on your point of view, in the existing building to bring it up to required standards in order for a cafe, as it's currently being operated, to continue. That will be in the order of a couple $100,000, don't know the exact figure, but it will also mean that there will be extensive works required on the building. Once we touch that building, it will take time to make the necessary changes to bring the building up to code. We anticipate that may be somewhere in the order of 9 to 12 months to do that work. Option number 2 is that we do a smaller level of investment in the building and address some of the health and safety issues and look at providing a different level of service. So instead of a cafe, we've got liquor license, doing evening meals, etc., 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 a lot of hot food and food preparation requirements. We changed the service offering to more towards a kiosk. So ice creams, soft drinks, pie warmers, maybe sandwiches. These are just the options. You can express your views on each of the options in due course, and I'll explain how you can do that shortly. The other option in the short term is that we make the space available for community use. We've heard a lot about the fact that we've got particularly elderly people, but people generally like to be able to go in or get out of the elements, get into the building where there's air conditioning, table and chairs where they can have a conversation. Those issues, so some people put greater value on the ability to get out of the elements and sit down and have a conversation. Some people put more emphasis on the meal. We will be issuing a survey very shortly so we can unpick what are the most important things and of most value to the community and rank them so that we can start to get a finer grained view from the community as to exactly what you want so that we can look to provision it. If we look at the option in terms of using the space as essentially a casual community meeting space, tables, chairs, air conditioning and light out of the elements, the other question is, option is, could council or should council consider, instead of having, and I know Nick made reference to a commercial business being run. Commercial in my mind is someone who's running a business to make a profit. The alternative is a not-for-profit scenario where we have potentially community groups providing potentially tea and coffee, again, there's outlaying options. So we've got now an issue of short, medium, long term. We need to determine what we will do in the short term, and each of these options will be outlined in a survey and give people the ability to provide that feedback. Longer term, we have commenced or about to commence the process of master planning. Whatever investment we make in the facility now needs to be in the context of the future. I made a comment before. Some people in this room will clearly not agree with me, and picking up on one of Nick's comments about what is an appropriate level of investment versus the return. The building, we've recently done a condition assessment of the building. We know that the building is in fair to poor condition. We know that. We've seen the photos. I think we've got a shared understanding of the challenges that lay before us. The question then is, do we put a significant amount of money into a building that may only have a life of 5 years? Just pick a number. I'm just going to say 5 years for the time being. Alternatively, and we'll get to the issue of rent in a minute, alternatively, do we start to, like we did with the jetty, picking up on the previous comment about the bold vision for the future, instead of investing in a facility that's been there for a number of decades and it's getting towards end of life, do we instead invest in new facilities, noting also that the Surf Lifesaving Club have approached council with some issues with their building and a desire for money to be spent. It's again a bit of a glass half full, glass half empty conversation. Council, albeit a number of years ago, has spent already, we'll round up for the sake of simplicity, $500,000 on that building in the past. Do we spend more money on that building? Or do we start to think about spending money on a new building? So these are the sorts of questions that we need to work through. The master plan will also go to the point of saying, whatever investment council makes in a facility, how does that facility then interface and interact with all of the other activities and things that are happening in and around that precinct? We know that the jetty is a key driver in terms of visitation and people enjoying the jetty. There is a proposed development on the existing hotel or motel site that sits within the precinct, and we know that the Whyalla High School site within 12 or 18 months will no longer be a high school site with the opening of the new what is it called? Whyalla City School. So we've got a number of moving parts, and what council is really keen to do now, and I think hopefully everyone in this room will appreciate this comment, we want to make good decisions, informed decisions to inform where we go to from here, and we really want to get that more granular feedback. So that survey will come out next week. We will be looking to get as much feedback as we can from the broader community in terms of what we do short term and then longer term. It's already been referenced that the master planning process will kick off in February. That is really an exciting project or initiative from council to look at how is the foreshore going to evolve and develop and serve the local community and visitors for the next 5 or 6 decades to come. So it's a key point.
On behalf of South Whyalla Football Club, I've got a few points here. We're 102 years old. We've been on Beach Road for 102 years. And we've looked at little bits and pieces, and at the moment, I don't know when, someone's pipe and we're a lagoon.
Yeah, can I just quickly reference that? And Eddie? Yeah.
Our club is not only a footy club, it's air gymnastics, it's a cricket club, and it's also a netball club. Now, as the council looked at, if you do relocate us, has anyone looked at how much it's going to cost?
Yeah, no, you're raising really good points, and these are the sorts of issues that we need to work through in a logical and a proper manner to look at the master planning. The master planning will seek feedback and input from many, many stakeholders. Yours is one of many. The Surf Lifesaving Club's already been mentioned, but we also want the broader feedback from the community at large. So this is a really good opportunity for the council to vision and think about and reimagine what the foreshore might look like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time, so that we can start to make that investment and start to do that planning now for the future.
And of course, as Justin has just said, this is actually the time for the community to continue to be deeply involved in all of those complicated decisions about the short, medium and long-term opportunity for your whole community and the various stakeholders in it. You've been incredibly patient. Thank you for letting us go a little bit over time. I'm sure there are more of you who've got some comments or questions. We welcome those in writing. If you could hand them out to a staff member on the way out, or indicate that you would like to send a question in, your question will be treated with respect and answered. So there is no stopping of this conversation that has now begun here tonight with such passion and good intent. I'd like, now I've got permission from the Mayor to officially draw this meeting to a close. Yes, Mayor.
Just first, I just want to thank everyone very much for coming tonight. I think your feedback has been fantastic, and I think it's a very clear view of what you want. And I really appreciate you coming. Thank you very much. We will take the petition to Council next week for a formal meeting. But yes, thank you very, very much. And please put your any extra comments or questions through our other media options as well. Thank you.